Here's a quick question for you. Which lemon is genetically enhanced? I know some of you might choose the one with the arm because some macho fruit that can trample others of its kind. So what many think of when it comes to genetically modified or GM foods. Surprisingly, neither of these lemons were modified. So what is a GM food? Is it this? Or perhaps this? Or what about this pear? No. A GM food is basically the term for any organism that has been created by combining genes from different organisms. GM products currently, or in development, include medicines, vaccines, foods and food ingredients, feeds, and fibers. What we are looking at with genetically modified foods is the dawn of a new day. The U.S. is by far the leader in production and growing of GM products in the world. According to ORNL.gov, in 2006 there was roughly 252 million acres of transgenic crops planted in 22 countries. Most of these crops were herbicide and insect-resistant soybeans, corn, cotton, and canola. Yes, like the oil. Some crops that are commercially grown or field tested are a sweet potato that is resistant to a virus that could eliminate most of the African harvest. There is an enhanced rice with increased amounts of iron and vitamins that could help lessen the chronic malnutrition in Asian countries, and plants made to withstand extreme weather conditions. Currently in development are bananas that produce vaccines for humans against infectious diseases. Think diseases like hepatitis B. There's also fruit and nut trees that yield their products years earlier. There's fish that mature faster, and that's just to name a few. Just imagine, for example, the rice I had mentioned a little earlier. It was developed by researchers at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology for Plant Sciences, and it was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation is a non-profit organization who, along with the Institute, would like to send the improved rice to any third world country who requests it. Think about it. It could be the real-life solution to the world's malnutrition problem as we know it. Unfortunately, many very rigorous protests took place against GM foods, so the grants that made this rice a reality was not renewed. Because of that, this rice might not even be able to come on the free market. There are many opponents to genetically modified foods. They have concerns regarding labeling and regulation. Consumer interest groups believe that labeling should be mandatory for all GM products because they believe people have a right to know what they're eating. According to the FDA, however, GM foods are substantially equivalent to non-GM foods and are therefore not subject to stringent labeling. In addition, regulation gets confusing in the U.S. because there are 3 government agencies that have jurisdiction over GM products. According to CSA.com, to put it simply, the EPA evaluates GM plants for environmental safety, the USDA evaluates whether the plant is safe to grow, and the FDA evaluates whether the plant is safe to eat. According to current FDA guidelines, a modified ear of corn sold at a produce stand is not subject to FDA regulation because it is a whole food product, whereas corn flakes are regulated because it is a food product. However, by FDA standards, GM foods are substantially equivalent to unmodified natural foods and are therefore not subject to FDA regulation. Another issue that comes up by opponents is the possible unintentional gene transfer to non-target species. What is meant by this is that these introduced genes may cross over into the non-enhanced crops that are planted next to modified crops by cross-pollination. What opponents fail to see is that genes are exchanged between plants through their pollen. According to articles in the journal Nature Biotechnology, one way to remedy cross-pollination between GM and non-GM crops is by modifying the GM plant to make the male sterile. This disallows the ability for cross-pollination to take place, ensuring that enhanced and non-enhanced crops remain separate. Whether you know it or not, virtually all U.S. consumers have been exposed to GM products. While there are actually very few enhanced whole fruits and vegetables available in produce stands, processed foods like vegetable oils or breakfast cereals most likely contain some GM ingredients. It may be my personal belief, but I feel that one day the advantages of GM products will overcome the challenges this field faces in its infancy. The choice to eat an enhanced product is yours. I know I've made my choice.